you're that trusted advisor to them. They're asking you for opinions, and you're able to show them the stuff that's there and the value that comes with these things. And so, yeah, I mean, we've definitely fired customers.
Welcome to Channel Security Secrets. I'm Lou Rabon. On this show, we expose the untold secrets and critical insights from the people shaping the future of cybersecurity sales in the Trusted Advisor channel. If you're looking to up your game around selling security, stick around. Channel Security Secrets is brought to you by Cyber Defense Group, on a mission to shift cybersecurity from reactive to resilient. Hi, everyone. I'm thrilled to chat with our guest today. He's a seasoned technology executive, strategic partner, and trusted advisor focused on bridging the gap between operations and technology. With over 8 years of experience across on-premise and cloud ecosystems, he specializes in IT infrastructure, cloud solutions, and cybersecurity. He's currently the CTO and senior solutions architect at D&M Enterprise. Marc Jorgensen, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
Good to have you. So Marc, what would you consider your biggest secret in the channel or in your industry to be?
Well, I think the secret is we know what it's like to be on the other side of the desk. I spent 15 plus years before coming over to the side as infrastructure directors, network engineers, server engineer, help desk engineers. So I understand, what's happening in the business. There were small companies, some were, a couple hundred people, up to JP Morgan Chase and Bear Stearns and Lehman Brothers. Like, we worked at some big places. And so to understand how the enterprise world works, along with SMBs and things like that, I think that's our biggest differentiator. A couple of the managing partners came over, known them for a long time, multiple CIOs of multiple big companies. So we all understand it. Coming and joining Steve here at D&M, I think we brought this extra level that, he understood the side of this for so long, and then we brought all the expertise from the other side because we were customers of Steve's. D&M, I used them when I was at Cash America as a director of infrastructure. We rolled out an entire network project. So I got to not only know what it's like on that side, but I got to use an agent or a partner in this space to understand how it works with them. So I get to see both sides of it, and I can explain that to others that this is how it's supposed to work. This is how it should work. This is what you're looking for. These are things to avoid. And we just I think that's our biggest secret is knowing what it's like to who we're selling to.
Yeah, that's huge. That is a good secret too, because to be able to sit in that place and understand what it is to consume. I've got a similar story in the sense that, I started the company as a consultant, but I've also been the one consuming the consulting services. And yeah, when I did it, it gives you the advantage to know the pain points, obviously, and then improve upon them. So whatever you saw in an advisor maybe that you didn't have a good experience with, you can say, well, I'm not going to be that guy. I know exactly how to speak to these people. And I think when you establish that kind of relationship, that's when, magical things happen because you gain their trust, basically.
Yeah, and it's really helped out. I mean, a couple of scenarios, we've been able to not only do that, come in as consultants and do some of that stuff, but even just, I have one customer now that I'm like, hey, I can help you build some load balancers. They needed some help with some stuff. I'm like, I can jump in there and do that for you. You guys are doing some other stuff. They're doing an IaaS, working on a security deal with them. We're doing some other stuff. I'm like, listen, this is going to take me a couple hours. It might take you a couple of days. Let me help you build it. And then if you want to go ongoing support, great, let me help you. But if not, fine. I'm here to help with this piece of it because I know you get up and running. And then that shows the trust. Right? It shows that they can build along with those things, right? Because we know what we're talking about. We know what we're selling. We're not just, hey, here's this thing that's going to be great for you. And then you never hear from me again. And then we just disappear.
Except during a renewal.
Except during a renewal. We actually formed there was a renewal that 5 years ago, and they don't even know who the person was.
Right.
Like, so here's these guys sign and then leave. And so, but it's never been the D&M way. If you talk to Steve, the owner of D&M or the president, his big thing is our SLA is now, and I'll wait. And we wear the colors. You're not just hiring. You don't hire us, but as we come into contracts with this, we're there for the life of whatever it is, whether you renew with us or not. I mean, we have some big customers that we've had for 20, 15 years. They just stay with us because we don't treat them as a sales cycle. We're an extension of their team. They can pick up the phone and call us midnight because the circuit's down. great, I'll answer the phone, I'll take it for you, and we'll help you get whatever you need to have done. So I think that's another unique thing that's different between us than
Yeah.
most partners or agents that are out there you see, because we're not just selling you something to move on. You succeed, we succeed, and we really look at and believe in that.
Yeah, that's excellent. And it's interesting because you believed in that model so much as someone who consumed those services that you decided to jump the fence and do it yourself. Tell me about that. What was that decision process like?
Well, it was an odd decision. I mean, in 2015, 2016, like I said, we were all at Cash America. Myself, Vic, Tim, and a guy Chris Poole, who's also at D&M, were here. And that company was acquired. We thought it was going to go one direction, it went another direction, and we all kind of got bought out, basically. So that kind of gave us the opportunity. It got me a chance to move back home. I moved back to Utah at that time. And then for the next year or so, just kind of did off the wall jobs, consulting, doing some stuff. And then Vic and Tim were like, "Hey, we're doing this. We're going to join up with Steve," because they were to go start their own. And Steve's like, "What are you doing? Like, you've been a customer of mine forever. Like, let's do this together." And so those two came over as managing partners, and then I came on about a month later, and we've been here ever since. It was just this kind of easy transition, so to speak. Because I mean, obviously, Steve was a customer of Vic's for so long as CIOs and helping us do all the things that we were doing, and so it was a really easy transition, coming out of that world and into this world. Because Steve was already such a part of it, that we didn't have to go learn a lot of new ropes. We kind of got a leg up. I was talking to someone at an event a couple of months ago and kind of explaining that. They're like, "How do you do this so fast?" And I'm like, we got kind of lucky, right place, right time. We knew a guy, but we also brought enough to the table that it made sense for all of us to come over and do these things that we're doing. And so it was just kind of helped everyone.
It's awesome. So, you have that rare advantage of being technical, of having sat in that seat. What do you say to trusted advisors that aren't technical? Because I think there's a vast majority that aren't, and they find it hard to have those conversations, especially around security.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, right? Steve will be the first to tell you he's not a technical guy. He knows nothing about some of the tech that he sells. So when I talk to people, it's understanding more so what the customer needs, what they're looking for, what they need for that, and understanding, the carriers that are there and the options that are available. You don't have to be a technical guy to know that these 10 companies can provide a security service, or that this TSD might be a little easier to go through or talk to. You can understand that without understanding the tech you're selling. Or just understanding what the customer needs and what they're looking for, and being able to speak to that piece of it, saying, "Hey, we know you need security for this," but then be able to ask some simple questions. You don't have to know technical knowledge. You can't answer them. You don't need to, but they are going to know the answer, and they're going to know what you're looking for. So as you're going out to other carriers and talking to people, you have that information that you can speak to enough. And then it's trusting those guys to be able to get that through that piece of it, right? Their essays, the carriers of things that they're doing, to be able to speak to that. But having that level of trust with the customer, even if it's an expertise you don't really know, say, "Hey, I'm really great with circuits, or I'm great with the IaaS, or whatever it is." Security is a new thing for me. It's big and scary. No one really knows. But I mean, there's so many different things that are out there starting. I mean, cyber insurance. That's a easy gateway into someone selling a security opportunity, because everyone has to have that nowadays. And if you don't have it, you're just nuts. Like, what kind of business are you running without cyber insurance? But as part of the cyber insurance piece of it, like, we're not going to sell that. I'm not going to help you get that. We have no idea who's doing that, but we know there's pieces of that piece that you need to have in order to get your cyber insurance. So starting off with an assessment, what companies do the best assessments, figuring out that piece, and then just pushing it an assessment, and then it kind of grows from there. I think that's probably the easiest way of a non-technical person getting into something that they don't really understand.
Yeah, I think they get concerned that when the conversation goes technical, they're going to be expected to have the answer, and I don't know is acceptable. And I've had that conversation with numerous TAs on this program, which is, yeah, you can say I don't know, and then to your point, get the advisors, get the vendors, or get the TSD that can provide someone that can actually help you, and then keep your ears open to listen to what are some of those qualifying questions that are being asked. And therefore, then you can start to get a little bit deeper when you have those conversations.
Yeah. I mean, honesty and, vulnerability, I guess, is probably one of the biggest ways. Being able to say that I don't know the answer to that question. Some people look at that as a negative. You'll have some customers that will. I'm not going to say that every customer's going to be like, "Oh, you don't know," and then they're going to move on to someone else and look for someone that might. But A lot of customers I found that as you're going through and telling them, they're like, "Yeah, I know a little bit about that, but maybe I don't know everything about it." And being honest and open about that builds that trust with them. Then you're kind of not so much vulnerable, but you are a little vulnerable because just you don't know the answer to it. I don't, but I can get you that answer. Give me an hour. Let me find out that answer for you, and I'll call you right back. That's okay, and that's going to be acceptable 99% of the time.
Yeah. I think that's the point of being a trusted advisor, right? Is that, yeah, you're not going to have the answer, but you know how to connect the customer to the people that have the answers. So that's a great point.
Yeah, exactly.
What about choosing the vendors? When you're looking for a security vendor, for instance, and we've worked together recently, we had a win, so that was good. What are you looking for when you're looking not just at security vendors, but any vendors?
So a lot of it is people, especially I found in this business that a lot of people move between companies. In cybersecurity, I think is one of those things that depending on your CI, your CISO, or depending on the tool set or who the users are there, who your security guys are there, they're all going to have their kind of flavor of security. Majority of them are all pretty much the same. Like they all have the same basic qualities. They all kind of do the same thing. So I look for responsiveness. People that I'm reaching out to, if I'm selling a deal and someone's not, the salesperson's not responding back to me, chances are their tech support's not going to be very good either, right? And it might be vice versa, but I'm not going to bring a deal to someone that's not easy to work with or not open change or responses or easy to work with, and I don't want someone that knows everything, right? I've actually had a vendor come onto a customer call, and they were just agreeing to everything, and the customer was like, There's no way they can do everything." He's
Right.
all right. I'm just voting them out already, and I'm all, "You didn't even let them finish their stuff." The guy goes, "I don't care." That guy can't know all of that right now. It's impossible. There's just no way. Of course, he didn't, but he was saying he was. But I mean, so that's you look for the sales guys, the SEs they're bringing on. So going to the TSDs and asking their recommendations, right? Because they're dealing with people. And then I always meet with everyone. Like I always every week I kind of go out and meet new carriers, new vendors, because it's just I want to know because I might have a stable of these five cybersecurity companies are great, but there always could be that next one that's out there that that like the deal that we just kind of won with. That customer, that deal, I've been trying to get that cybersecurity company in somewhere for 5 years. And it's just never been the right place, the right fit. I brought them into it. They just other directions or this and that, but it's knowing who's there, it's knowing what they can do and the capabilities because that customer that we have here is very specific. They were looking to get rid of some things and then add more things to it. And so I'm like, well, this is a perfect fit because it checks all of your boxes. And of course, the price has to be right. And so it's just meeting with them, and who I find is the easiest to work with most of the time is who we kind of go with. Um, Whether we win with them sometimes and sometimes we don't, but bringing them to the table, going through it, and then having that relationship with people, I think is one of the most important things.
Yeah, I mean the adage, "People buy from people, not from companies," is just so even more important here in the channel because that's what it is. The channel, I think it could be called the trusted relationships channel, because that's what it is. It's pretty crazy.
That's really what it is. I mean, there's so many people that we've talked to that sales guys for one company, and they're moving on to someone else, and they're like, "Hey, I'm doing this stuff now. What do you want to do with this?" And it's like, okay, well, and sometimes you just ignore those people because you're like, I wasn't a big fan of you to begin with,
Right.
so good luck on your next adventure. And sometimes it's like, great, well, what do you have? What do you offer? Let's go for it. Let's see what's out there, and then you learn about that, and then that's another thing you bring into it. Just because the person on the other side of it is going to be so willing to work with you and help your customer that you're going to win.
Yeah, and have integrity, and yeah, just get the job done. I mean, gosh, as an employer, I have to say that I've it's really been a challenge. There are people that, they get hired for a position and they kind of fill the position and that's it. And then there's people that are like they really want to excel at what they do and they go the extra mile. And unfortunately, not everyone is like that. So, or maybe fortunately, it depends on which side you're on, but yeah, you wanna keep those good people close. I think that's really important. Yeah, yeah. So what about some challenges? Are you, obviously you're solving bigger problems other than, the basic stuff because you have the capability. So what are you seeing out there right now as, like, big challenges in either tech and or, cyber?
I mean, a lot of it this year. was just the amount of noise around AI. There's so much stuff that everything's AI. What's this is AI? AI is such a buzzword now. So you start to bring companies, well, what are they doing for this? And what are they doing for that piece of it? And then you start talking about just basic security stuff, and it turns into this whole AI conversation. And you're like, well, it doesn't do that. Or you don't want it to do that in some aspects. Like that's not where you want to use AI for. You want some of this other stuff to be able to do it. And so that this year, that and the tariffs have been a big thing too, which is odd because we deal with a lot of financial companies and a lot of things like that, but they still look at the market and they still look at what's happening around the world and around environments. And so, I have a couple of customers that have budgets, have projects. They're like, well, we're holding off just to see what happens. We're giving it 6 months to see where we're at with these things. And you're like, okay, that's great, but what are you doing for that stuff now? Like this problem's not going to go away over the next 6 months. You still have to solve for it, and you just a lot of stuff, especially in the last year, has been kicking cans down the road. Like we're gonna wait and find out what's happening, and you're like,
Yeah.
it's it's not going to go well.
No, no, we've seen that. To be honest, I feel like Mark, companies have been kicking the cans down the road forever. There's a lot of tech and security debt, but especially since COVID, I feel like sales cycles were a lot shorter pre-COVID, and since it's been like 5 years now, and I think every time it feels like we're out of the woods, something weird happens again, and here we are. Everyone's holding on to cash and waiting. So that's it's a real challenge in this market. How do you get past that?
Some of it is just being there, and, proving that you are that, not being an annoying sales guy. Um, Great. Okay, that project's not great. What else you doing? Other things you're working on. Security's on hold. But what else you have? But there's other things to be able to work on and talk to. And sometimes it's just being the person's friend. Reaching out to them every couple of months, every couple of weeks. How's it going? Let's grab dinner. Let's grab lunch. Let not talk about work. Like just getting to know all these people in that case. We've had a lot of customers that we've just shown up of we didn't do business with them at one company, but just the way we treated them, they go to the next place and all of a sudden they have a need and now they're like, well, just chomping at the bit to get us in the door because they know that we can help them and they've almost become friends kind of a way. We have a lot of customers that do that. So, I mean, challenge wise, it's just there's so many hit or miss things about it. It's so many variables, depends on the size of the company. We found enterprises has slowed down a lot in terms of just waiting the most to kick that can down the road, just because they can. Some of the smaller businesses, sometimes they have to act fast. Sometimes their cyber insurance is renewing, and we don't have this piece of it, or we don't have this side of it. So shoot, we just need something, and we need something now. And then they'll come back and revisit it, a year later or 6 months down the road. But they got to get that piece of it, and so it's just a lot of it's timing. It's just finding that right person at the right time that's looking for something. And sometimes there's nothing you can do about it, and you're just great. I'll reach out to you in a month, and we'll see where we're at, and just kind of move along and presence, let them know we're there. Most overcomes those challenges.
The transactional sales, we've spoken about that a lot on this podcast too, which is, I mean, that transactional sales are dead. That's also why the best trusted advisors are having those conversations that don't necessarily lead to a sale, immediately, and genuinely connecting with customers. You want to work with people you like. I mean, that's the relationship, a recurring theme that we're talking about that you kicked off the show with. So yeah, I think that's really important. But the kicking the can down the road, I want to talk about that a bit more because, yeah, bad things can happen. And we often try to educate the customer that, okay, yeah, we understand there's a smaller budget, et cetera. Or maybe you want to tick a couple boxes, but we're always trying to drive them to a programmatic approach to be able to do this repeatedly, not just on a one time, one off basis. So how are you having those conversations with your customers?
A lot of it is it's not really a fear or scare tactic, but sometimes they're not seeing the bigger picture of it. And having that ability to say, listen, I've got, 30 or 40 other customers that just went through this last same thing. And, X, Y, or Z happened. And, you don't want that person to be in that spot. If you've got that availability, if you have the budget, if you're looking for something, then let's solve for it. Like what's holding them back, first of all, and why are they not making the decisions, or what's really the key driver of that? Sometimes it's they've been told from up and they can't do anything about it, and sometimes it's they're the decision maker, and they're kind of kind of stuck in analysis paralysis. There's so many options. There's so many different things. What's the best one? What happens if I pick this one and something happens to it? Or what happens if, I sign up for this deal and then all of a sudden that company goes out of business. And so you have these conversations with people and you're like, hey, well, this guy's been around for 15 years. I like to tell people, I can't predict the future. Um, I worked for Bear Stearns, 82 years. They were at Bearwoods, and their big claim to fame was our stock is the greatest. Every employee there was buying stock. They got bonuses and Bear stock, all of that stuff. Poof, gone in a day. On a Sunday afternoon, we're having a conversation. Do I have a job tomorrow? And so any business can do that. And so if you're stuck in that paralysis of having to worry about if this company's going to do X, Y, or Z, or if they're going to be in business or out of business, well, you're thinking about the wrong things.
Yep. Asking the wrong questions.
You're asking the wrong questions and you're worrying about the wrong stuff. Because listen, what if somebody hacks you tomorrow and locks up all of your stuff and wants $20 million in ransomware? Was that worth the decision to wait to find out if a price goes down a little bit or this company's, quarterly report comes out and make sure it's good enough? It's the outweighs of the benefits. What are you looking at? What are you worried about? Because if you're worried about getting hacked or you're worried about a breach or you're worried about one of those things, you can't really kick that can down the road because you're probably already vulnerable if you're thinking about it. And you probably already know that something's probably not quite right in the environment and you've got holes and they need to be fixed. And so, it's explained to them and kind of showing them or explaining it to them, there's a bigger picture to this, and they might be just this narrow focus on something that they can't get past it, but they're not seeing the rest of it. And that's where being that trusted advisor comes in and saying, listen, I get it. I understand where you're going with this. But if you look at the industry as a whole and what hundreds of other companies are doing with this, or even hundreds of our other customers that are doing this, like people we talk to on a normal basis, they're going through this as well, or X, Y, and Z has happened to them because they were waiting for that and helping them get to that decision, saying, this is where you should go. Here's the 3 guys. Pick one. What tool set do you want? Great. Does it come down to price? Great. Let's get you the best price. Is it tool set? Is it the SIM? Is it the tool that's on the machines? Like, where you got to ask those questions to find out where that hangup is on why they're kicking it down the road.
Yeah. And I mean, so many thoughts on that. One of them is that it's not just about the tools, it's the people, the process, and the technology. And obviously that's our, value prop as well. So I'm always thinking about that. But yeah, I think that's where a lot of companies fall down too, because they're like, okay, Qualys or whatever. There's a big vendor. We'll get that for vulnerability management, but then they don't really have a program. They just, okay, let's set it up. Let's start scanning. Okay, who gets the scans? What do you do when the scans come back and they show, that there's vulnerabilities? And what if those vulnerabilities are in an environment that maybe you can't patch or patch as quickly because it's mission critical, like manufacturing or something like that? All those questions need to be answered. And then all of a sudden, to your point, there's a little bit of like, oh gosh, we didn't think this through. Or, on the other hand, you've got the people that overthink it, that are the decision makers, where they're afraid, or maybe they don't have the political capital. Often I think one of the answers too is, yeah, you got to show them what could go wrong, but maybe you go above their head, which is very dangerous in a sales environment, obviously, because you could just burn that relationship if you're, they feel like you're, kind of jumping over them, etc. But I think there's definitely a way to do it diplomatically, where it's like, okay, you're not getting the support you need from your boss. Let's have a conversation together with your boss, and let me just show you some of these, anonymized readouts of the last couple breaches we've worked or we've heard about in your industry. So there's ways to do it, but it's also people have breach paralysis, not just analysis paralysis, but breach fatigue, essentially, which is the sky's falling. You say these 100 companies are doing it, but they're still getting hacked. So the biggest ones are, so a lot of these companies are like, well, why should we even spend any money on security? And that's dangerous too, because once they get to that point, it's like, you'll find out there's often a point where we try to, push stuff, and not just because for sales, like, hey, we're not doing it to meet a number. We're doing it because we're like, hey, if you don't do this, something we know, because we do breach response as well. We've seen it. We've been the responders. And when they don't take it, sometimes you just got to walk away and be like, okay, give us a call when something goes wrong. So yeah, have you fired customers before?
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah, sure have. It's one of those things, right? If you know it's not gonna be, if it's not necessarily worth it, right? Because I mean, it's what you'd like to deal with, right? As a trusted advisor, we come into these things, we're looking for opportunities, but we're not just looking for a sale, and so we're not just looking for that dollar sign. And if we were, then I would pick any customer. It doesn't matter. I would sell for more than anything, but I don't want that headache, right? Because I want to be a part of something that's they're doing. So we want to be that trusted person. I want to be able to come to you and have a conversation that's open and say, listen, you're doing this. I think it's completely wrong and this is why. And be able to have that conversation with someone because you're not just the sales guy to them, you're that trusted advisor to them. They're asking you for opinions and you're able to show them the stuff that's there and the value propositions that comes with these things. And so, yeah, I mean, we've definitely fired customers. We've had some people we've gone out and done some things for, and they come back to it, and you're like, I don't think this is gonna work out for either one of us. You guys are looking for something totally different that we don't do or don't offer. Um, we don't we look for the match, just like they're looking at us for the match. So yeah, 100%.
Two-person dance, or yeah, two-company dance. Because, yeah, it's also the tick the box stuff, like, I wanna just check the box for this or that, and, security, we're talking heavily about security, but even in technology, where they're saying, "Hey, we're gonna cut corners here and here," and especially as a CTO and former CTO, you know exactly what that leads to. You're like, "Okay, you don't want redundancy in your infrastructure because you don't wanna take on the cost," but, I know what happens when look at what just happened to Amazon.
Redundancy of anyone, like, let's be honest.
Yeah, it's crazy, but, it's anyone that was in US East 1 that didn't have any and they had, no failover, whatever mechanisms they had for failover didn't work, obviously. It's pretty crazy when you think about and the logos that this happened to, like and then you wonder who's asking the questions on the C-suite of the CTO or the CIO or of, amongst each other or whomever was responsible for that, like, where was that decision process and how much money did they lose during those, that whatever 12, 14 hours of downtime and reputation versus, the just having the redundancy and having that in place.
Yeah, it's funny, we used to work I worked for a company, the CFO there used to have just some crazy off the wall sayings. And one time something had happened, and he comes storming in the room, and he's like, "You know what? IT is like the offensive line. Nobody gives a shit until someone misses their tackle and the quarterback's laying on the ground with a broken knee."
Right.
No one thinks about some of this stuff, and so a lot of times, especially in enterprise, they're pretty good about being redundant or doing some of these things, but a lot of time it's overlooked, right? Because I don't wanna pay double cost, or I don't wanna do this, and I don't need the redundancy, I'm in the cloud, right? I've had people say that. "I'm in Azure, I'm AWS, I'm in the cloud, everything's fine," and you're like, "Oh, God," like, if that one center all of your eggs are in one basket, even having some redundant. I mean, that's the beauty of the cloud, having your stuff redundant in another region, even if it's turned off.
Yeah.
Great, you might pay some compute costs and some storage costs. It might be an extra couple of grand a month depending on how big your environment is, but that extra couple of grand is like that insurance policy. You need to have something in case something terrible happens and there's out of your control. Amazon going down, none of those guys had any control over that. They were down hard. And what are you gonna do? You can't do anything. You gonna call Amazon and yell at them? Great. They don't care. They're trying to get themselves back up. It's your environment. Amazon and Azure look at that as it's your stuff. We're just hosting it for you. It's really your problem. If you didn't take care of it or you didn't move it over, it's not my fault.
Yeah, you didn't build in redundancy yourself, or I mean, even better, do it on a completely different cloud provider, like have a backup on GCP. And, and there's ways to technically do that, which are ways that have existed for 30, 40 years. It's like,
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, we have a customer now that's doing a new data center, and their DR, they're looking at it now. What am I gonna do with DR? Or they're moving their production stuff. But where's my DR gonna be? So you have some that do think about it and go through along with what, but you have some that just, and I don't know if it's the C-suite. I don't know if it's the people in place. Sometimes it comes down to dollars and cents. You got CEOs and COOs like, I don't want to spend that extra money. I think it's a waste. You have some that think IT is a waste in some cases. Like you guys are costing us money. No one ever makes any money. What are you guys doing? You guys are pointless. I've worked at places that had that mentality. You're like,
Hopefully not for long.
"Oh, no, not for long, not for long," and that definitely changed, but you do see some customers that way. They go back to something and they're like, "No, we don't wanna spend that money. We don't think we need it," which is fine, but you gotta understand there's risks to not thinking you need it, and you gotta understand those risks because if something like this does happen, what are you gonna do? Who are you gonna blame? Those CEOs of those companies, I think some of those should be on the block. Like, what are you doing? Because you wanna save a couple of bucks, you didn't think about redundancy, it wasn't a big deal, you thought you were safe with Amazon? No one's safe with any of this. They're private cloud, public cloud. If you're not taking your steps to ensure your environment or have redundancy or have those things in place, or not listening to people that are telling you that you probably should have it, it's kind of on you with some of these things.
Agreed. And now in Australia, they've started to hold the C-suite accountable if there's like a breach, et cetera. And it's important. I mean, you've got what happened at Uber where the chief information security officer at Uber took a real hit, but he was also in the room and there's debate on this, but I've been in those rooms and decisions are made and you have a choice to either stand up for the right thing or what is going to be the right thing, even if the other people in the room don't agree with you. I'd rather get fired for saying what is true and have my integrity intact. And this has happened before versus, just being a sycophant and saying, yeah, whatever this is a consensus, et cetera. But, unfortunately, we're dealing with humans. So, I think you're right, though. Having accountability for the decisions that are made, and these days, every company is a tech company. You could be I don't care. An oil and gas is a really famous one where I don't know if you've worked in that industry, but they're like, we pull dead dinosaur guts or whatever remnants out of the ground. That's what we're doing. We don't need any security or something. It's like, okay, wait a second. On a remote well like in Papua New Guinea or something like that, it's like, okay, well, wait a second, isn't there an OT device, attached to that well? How do you monitor the health of that well? Oh yeah, and what if do you have anything that actually controls that well, like valves or like a PLC? Something like, oh yeah, actually we do. It's like, okay, yep, you might need some security there.
Right. Needs security around that.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. So yeah, I like the offensive line analogy though. That's a good one.
We had some other words for it, but I'll refrain from more.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
you get the idea.
No, it's true. It's true.
Yeah.
And that's, we that's why we try to reframe the conversation with security into one about it's not a cost center, it's an investment because, the ROI is your ability to continue to operate when something bad happens. And that's where the conversation needs to go. If the C-suite and the board is not thinking like that, most boards now have their stuff together, but for certain C-suites that are kind of like very myopic and not looking exactly the way that understanding how security and proper investment in tech, how important that is, they're going to find out, and that's why the ROI is also when you get a contract. You've probably seen this too. Some of the biggest, the quickest sales cycles we've had are when a company that hasn't invested at all in security or has been winging it gets a big contract with a Fortune 500 company, and they're like, "We hit the jackpot," and then they get the third party requirements list, and they start getting vetted, and they're like, "Oh, no security team, no security tools or controls," and then they're like, "Okay, now we have to invest," and then all of a sudden, this becomes, but guess what? It's twice, 3 times as expensive, and it risks the contract if they haven't already, proactively invested in that. So that's the where we go. We're like, okay, you get a big contract tomorrow with a Fortune 500. How are you going to, prove to them that you're doing security right? They're going to see right through it. And for the last 20, I don't know, plus years, I would say, I've seen so many companies try to wing it with these third party assessments, and they could do it actually. It's funny, one story I have is when the guy who was assessing was like really a well-known guy in the security industry, And that's when I got called up and they're like, "Hey, oh my gosh, I found out that this company was downloading Google policies and just doing a find and replace." And then he started to dig into it and they were like, "Oh my god, oh my god." So they called me up and I'm like, "Yeah, I'll take care of it." I started to talk to him about it. It wasn't like, "Oh yeah, they're doing that stuff and I'm going to lie about it." I just said, "Hey, they're in a transition. We're going to get through it." And as he started to speak to me, we actually became good friends. But yeah, as time went on, but yeah, that's not adequate, and especially with cyber insurance too, which you mentioned, like, if you're just not gonna get the policy paid, you can lie all you want, but it's kinda like saying getting health insurance and smoking a pack of cigarettes a day and saying you don't smoke, guess what? When they find out, all the smoking that's been happening and you've got lung disease or, God forbid, you're not gonna get your insurance paid.
In cybersecurity, those insurance policies, they used to pay out little stuff, and then
Oh,
oh, the
yeah.
last 5, 6, 7 years, man, they have locked that down. If you say you're doing something and you can't prove you're doing it, they're not gonna pay out anything.
Nope.
Just on the hook for whatever it is. I mean, I've seen it a couple of times. We've had some stuff that happens, and you're like, "Well, we weren't quite doing that," and it's like, "Okay, well, sorry,
Yeah.
you're out."
Yes. Pay for it.
The cyber insurance thing, because that's a good lead off to figure out where you're actually at with some things. Because if you're not meeting what at least the cybersecurity company is looking for, or the insurance company is looking for, man, some of these big players, the big 500 companies, even the 100 companies, man, those guys, they're spending $100 million a year on cybersecurity. They're asking you questions that they're just asking for basic stuff.
Yeah.
They're not looking for you to have the palos and have all this crazy stuff. They just want to make sure you're doing something and can prove it. And in some cases, they can't. They just hate it. They just no, yeah, most no, we're not doing that, or we're doing part of it, or yeah, I have that piece of it going on, and oh yeah, I've turned all the stuff on in Defender, or I've turned all the stuff on in Office 365. Yeah, we're doing all of that. We have all that locked down and safe, and you're like,
Yeah. Yeah. Let me see your privileged access list. When was the last time you reviewed that? Yeah. What are all these services accounts with admin that you just, sync to Azure AD and it actually means that the password hasn't been changed in 10 years and they've got full admin access to the entire environment or yeah, when they migrate to the cloud to Azure now, I don't know if this has changed recently, but not so long ago, normal user accounts could spin up infrastructure in the Azure cloud as like the default setting.
yeah, no, appreciate that doesn't happen.
Okay, all right, because we were like, what the heck is like how?
Why is some of that? I think they got a little bit of trouble for some of that thing.
Yeah, good because it's come on, guys, like just easy stuff, So
Yeah, but I mean, that's the thing. People rely on that, right? Because they're in Microsoft or they're using that piece of it. And so they feel that warm, safe security blanket around them. Well, I'm using Microsoft services. Well, okay. How do you have them configured? Who's watching it?
yeah, not Microsoft.
Microsoft doesn't care what you're doing or what you're looking at. If you don't have someone that's looking at that or doing some of those things, a lot now the big things we push towards managed SOC because what are you guys doing? Who has the people? Unless you're a big cybersecurity team, and even if you do, then they're still not watching everything or paying attention to everything. You need someone that's got their eyes on glass all the time because there's so many little things. Most cybersecurity breaches are people problem. So on an email, I opened this thing. I had one yesterday at D&M. They reached out to me. Oh, I opened this link. Oh, what'd you do? I just opened it and I heard and closed it. I'm like, you didn't put credentials in? No, 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 I didn't put credentials. Did you download the file? No, no, I didn't download it. All right, great. Let's scan your computer. Let's
Yeah,
make
yeah,
sure
yeah.
reset your password anyways, just to be safe.
Exactly.
I mean, it happens, right? And so if the people are unaware of what's going on to it, and someone randomly clicks a link that shows up, oh yeah, one today actually happened again. It was a customer. This person replies to and sends him emails all the time from the same email address. He replied back to the email, "Hey, is this legit?" "Oh yeah, yeah, for sure." "Oh, okay." So he clicks on it. I'm all, dude, but I'm hammering it with the D&M people so much and so often. I'm like, if you get anything and you're just slightly suspicious, close it and call me. Don't even touch it. Just pick up the phone and call me. I don't care what it is. I'll tell you if it's send it to me. I'll check it out first. If it's good, great. If it's not, I'm gonna tell you. So I've got them all pretty trained now. But that's where a lot of the stuff happens is people just randomly click stuff where you've got some employee that they just started a couple weeks ago, haven't finished all their training, or even someone that's been there for 10 years. I know what I'm doing. This person emails me all the time. They click it, they download it, they run it. Now they got ransomware and the whole company's screwed. That's what attackers are looking for, is that one weak link in the chain there to attack and vulnerable. It doesn't matter what kind of security you have or what you're paying for or who's watching it? If the people aren't aware of it either, and it don't matter. So part of it is too is the training pieces that come in the cybersecurity stuff and user awareness and making sure that that's part of that conversation as well. Because you could have the best tools, but if the people are just out there doing stuff and randomly putting their usernames and passwords into things, it's not going to matter.
Well, that's
Not going
also
to.
why it's really important to have a strategy where you can detect and respond to those things really quickly. And yeah, outsourcing the SOC or MDR is obviously a no brainer, especially for the smaller structures. But then also having, again, the people and process. We see a lot of companies falling down with their incident response process and program because when something happens, it's kind of ad hoc or they've taken a templated policy, haven't dusted it off in 3 years, don't really know what the contact tree is and what the levels of severity are and how to activate a team in if there were to be a breach. So, those that's the policy and procedure side, the people and process side that, is so important that, yeah, it doesn't matter if you hire an MDR vendor and you put someone in charge and they get the alerts internally. If they don't have a process to follow when something bad goes happens, it's not going to end well. So um with all this stuff, like what excites you actually about the future?
This is what really excites me about the future. I love IT because it changes so much. I think that's what's exciting about it, is to see the evolution of how things were. When you look at iPhones, the way they were in 2008 and 2009 to where we are, 10, 15 years later, you see it across the tech stack. I mean, AI 5 years ago was unheard of, and an AI thing was buzzwords that people were gonna, what are we going to do is going to take over the world. And now you look at some of the tools that are out there in place. I always tell people AI is not going to replace people. AI is going to replace people that don't know how to use AI. Or it's going to replace. And so as you see the future, you see the stuff that's coming out, like it's only going to get scarier in terms of security, right? Because it's going to get easier for bad actors to now do things. It's going to get harder to know what to believe and to trust, especially we see stuff on the internet that, I mean, it's getting really good. Things that are out there, so it's going to be harder for that. But I think at the same time, you see the tools and how they're implementing some of these things and some of the stuff that it's doing with the machine learning and all the other pieces of it, that it's almost a level playing field in some cases, right? Because for so long, the bad actors have always had not necessarily the better tech, but they've been finding easier ways to get around some of that stuff. And so now that we're integrating some of these things that are doing some of this stuff that a human's missing or doing now, especially some of the bigger enterprises, I think that where AI is going to come into some of these things is a really exciting thing to be able to see it in action. I did a demo with a customer who was outside of security. They were doing something, but this tool sits in between the monitoring platforms in the IT, like the ticketing system. The automation of stuff that you can do now that, if you had to log in and fix something, great. You don't have to log into the server. You're doing all this stuff. And now you can do that. And then you come out of it, you click generate, and it builds this workflow for you. And it's just all of this stuff that makes these tasks that were so mundane and so like, I don't want to do that again. Like, I got to go fill all this stuff out again, or I got to go write that document again. It's like, come on. And so that's what excites me is just the ease of technology and how it's just going to become so much more ingrained in our daily lives. Um, Listen, I'm a Jetsons fan, right? I have a smart home. I got, lights and thermostats, and I have also I wanna walk in the room and be like, "Alexa, turn my lights on." Like, I think that's cool stuff. So I think that's what exciting me is about just being able to have all that, but then, obviously, it comes with the risks of those things because now everything's a hackable device, and working is safe on the internet, and so it's just this double-edged sword, but I'm excited for how fast things are progressing. I can't wait.
Yeah, the productivity, I think it's a productivity and convenience game that you're talking about, which is, I mean, even with AI, I had this weird list that I had to have formatted in a certain way that would have taken me 30 or 45 minutes to copy, paste, change. Not the best use of my time, especially, in the C-suite. And I'm like, wait a second, hey, pop it in, wasn't sensitive, pop it into ChatGPT. Can you format this as a CSV? I need these two columns. Boom, literally in under 2 minutes, and then I can move on with my day. I got it, did what I needed to do, and then moved on to the next thing. That saved me, yeah, 45 minutes, an hour, and then also it's the, mental overhead of, yeah, doing a task that you find mundane and not fun, and to your point, that's also where we get a lot of, like, ticket writing and stuff. people start to get sloppy. They don't want to document their changes and stuff because they're like, okay, I just wrote 15 tickets today. I'm burnt out. But now if we can just have an AI companion, it's like, okay, let me fill that out for you. All of a sudden they're like, they want to do more tickets because it was just made easy for them.
Yeah, being able to type in the prompt, this is what happened. What this is great. Now go fill that format for me.
Yeah.
Save me. I mean, scripting wise, scripts used to take me a couple hours to write something. I'm like, all right, you got to go back and then use the comma somewhere. So then you're searching for hours of code.
Yeah.
And I write a script out in 30 seconds now.
Yeah.
Oh, well, here's the error.
Yeah.
Oh,
If
it's
it
because
fails and then it just fixes it, man.
fixes it. You're like, I don't even understand this. I'm like,
I did.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's wild. It's so wild.
That's the best use case. I was doing these scripts for Python scripts to be able to go through forensic artifacts to be able to pull out like these unformed. One was like a mailbox file, and I had to pull out like who the sender was, who for like we're talking about tens of thousands of emails. There's no way if when I was asked by it was outside counsel during it was a breach, they had said, "Can you do this?" Even a year ago, I would have said, "Sorry, yeah, but that's going to be like $100,000." And then I would have hired someone or something. But now I was like, let me see what I can do. And literally, it took me a couple hours to get it right, but it literally like parsed through the what was it, the PST file? It was an OST file, and it pulled that stuff out and formatted in a CSV that was able to be imported. It was unbelievable. I was, like, blown away. It's a complete and I never would have been able to write this Python script. It was like I don't know, a couple 100-line Python script, and anytime there was an error, to your point, boom, did it, fix the error, reformatted it, added, like, error correction, error checking, prompts. I was like, "Whoa, man." Like, I look like a programmer.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? And that's the beauty of knowing we're having the backgrounds, right? Because we've done this stuff, and so you kind of understand what it is. And that's why I say, like, it's not replacing people. It's gonna replace some people. I'm not gonna lie, because they're just some tasks that I mean, I feel paralegals. I mean, they're just
Yeah. Yeah.
that industry going
Done.
away. Why would a lawyer ever hire someone to write up a document when he could just feed it into something and say, spit this out?
Yeah.
And 30 years later, he's got his whole document. But then he's got to go through and read anyways. Now he's not paying someone 6 hours or 8 hours to go write this for them. And so but in the IT world, in the tech world, I think that it's just gonna be so ingrained in our daily lives that if you're not understanding it now, you're gonna get left behind. It's just one of those things that it's gonna advance so fast that it's gonna be so hard to catch up to some of this stuff. We're gonna look like the dinosaurs in Cobalt Code, when coding came, and those guys were like, "We did this forever." It's like, but now the Cobalt stuff, AI's writing that for them.
I was gonna say there was a time where, like, right before AI, anyone that knew, like, Fortran or Cobalt was actually getting, really, really big dollars per hour move those systems or try to put them on into the cloud or whatever. And now, yeah, yeah.
I got some guys that are taking AI and taking AS400 code because financial world and mortgage industry, I mean, they love their AS400s. Like, how are we gonna get rid of that? And then they got guys that have been there for 30 years, and they're the only ones that know how to do it or how to fix it.
Yeah, job security, or it used to be.
Used to be. Now all of a sudden, I mean, shoot, you can still have a job, but now you gotta learn how to use AI to write that code for you or how to troubleshoot some of that stuff for you. And now they're taking it and converting it to other apps that don't even need to run on an AS400.
Yeah. Yeah, because the AS400, hardware that used to be you needed it because it was a mainframe, but now we've got, billion times more powerful, hardware, so
Yeah. I mean, the GPU computing, I mean, I think that's what's so fascinating about tech is how fast it changes and how people find, some of the most just awful tasks and they're like, I just don't want to do it anymore. And they make their life easier. And so someone comes out with something and everyone's like, that was a genius idea. And then they kind of follow along with it. And so I think that's where this is going. And I think that's the most exciting thing.
yeah, next 5 to 10 years is gonna be really interesting.
It's gonna be wild.
Yeah. But listen, personally, like, we know how you got here because you explained how you at least moved over to the trusted advisor side, but, Earl, were computers something you always played with even as a kid like I did, or
Yeah, yeah, my dad had his first computer, it was an Apple it wasn't an Apple One, it was the It was the Macintosh. I don't remember what it was, but I was just enthralled with that thing.
Apple IIe or something. Yeah.
It was the main screen. It was the monochrome color.
Yep.
I used to
Yep.
I used to get on there and play games. My dad was like, "What are you doing?" Like, because he didn't use it, but I'm a 10-year-old. I'm playing with stuff, and every computer he ever had, I took it apart. See what the inside was like. It's just the way I've been. Sometimes I didn't put it back together, right? But hey, I got it apart. Bring it apart. Yeah, it's funny. I've always been in tech. I've always been interested by it. I used to joke with my friends. I'm like, oh, they're like, what do you want to do? And I'm going to work in an office building one day doing something. He goes, what? I'm like, I'm not a manual labor guy. Like, I'm not going to go outside and work. I guess that's just not for me. So, when I had the opportunity as a 19-year-old, that's what moved me to New Jersey. That's actually when I met Vic Pepe, one of the managing guys. That was my first job. Was a help desk, and it's funny because he actually fired me from that job. I was not the nicest of 19-year-olds. Customer service was not my strong suit then. Apparently, I grunted a lot. I guess what he said. I don't know. Well, because you get someone to call you, and you're like, really? You called me yesterday for your same password? Like,
Oh
forgot
yeah.
it again? I was just not nice to people.
You need patience on the help desk.
Yeah, I learned that, and so, but it was funny because he fired. He watched me walk into the office, and I guess a couple of the other ladies that were in this room. So back in those days, it was a place called SIB Mortgage, and there was 9 of us in IT, and we all sat in this little room, and we were all kind of outside the skirts of it, and then there was me and the other help desk lady in the middle of it, and so they all heard all my conversations. Everyone always knew what was going on and everything, and some of these ladies were like, you know what, that's just not the job for him. Bro, then I got a whole big talking to, a whole big thing, whatever it was, and then they put me on the desktop building. Um, Started ghosting images, started doing machines, and then that just took off into servers. I want to learn servers. Great, let's do infrastructure. Let's do Active Directory. Let's get me into all of these things, and it just kind of progressed from there. In every company we went to, everything we did, some they're like, "Oh, we need to do this." And I'm all, "I'll do it." They're like, "You know how to do it?" No. Sure. Yeah. I can do that, no problem. And I'd have to figure it out. I Googled a lot. So AI would have been really helpful in my younger days.
Oh yeah. Can you imagine if we had AI like 30 years ago? Forget it.
Oh my God. But I learned a lot. I had to learn a lot, right? I mean, when we went for Lehman Brothers, that company there, I took that from 80 servers to 600 in 2 years. And I unboxed, built, and racked and stacked every single one of those servers. Just all the time. I worked my day job, and then I'd go back to the data center at night because we weren't allowed to go in there until 7 o'clock at night. So I would go and work and build and stuff at like 3 o'clock. I would leave, and I'd come back at 7. And I was there till 10 almost every day. Just in the data center by myself, racking and stacking servers. So I've always liked tech. I think it's something, one of those things. My brain just works that way. I don't, solving problems and problematic things. There's always a level to something. Like, because with computers and with technology, now with machine learning, it's getting a little different because they can think for themselves, so to speak, right? But there's always a problem, and there's always a way to get to that problem, because if it's this, great. If it's not that, it's this. If it's not that, it's this. And there's always just this process to get through things, and that's always just what's fascinated me. It's always just kind of how it works. It's just a very logical way of looking at things, and that's how I treat tech.
Yep. That makes sense. What do you do for fun outside of work?
Depends on the time of year. I got really into snowmobiling the last 2 years. I was a big skier there for a long time, but after living out of the state for 15 years, I really didn't. Texas wasn't much for skiing, so not much for winter sports or anything. So, then it was just working and kids. But now that we've here and my kids are a little older, a lot of snowmobiling. We camp a lot, side by sides. The mountains, Utah. Growing up here, I never really cared about nature. We'd always go camping and go do whatever, but it was never a big deal until you leave and you live in Jersey, and then you live in Texas, and there's just flat nothing. And you're like, I miss the seasons and I miss the mountains. And so now every chance I get, I go up in the mountains or go hiking, do whatever. And sometimes just leave my phone and just go hike on some trail that's not hard, but I'll be on for 2 hours. And it's just like this reconnect to nature.
That's awesome. That's really cool. That's the way to go. You got to reconnect.
Oh yeah. Especially all this tech and all this Wi-Fi that surrounds me and all this stuff.
Oh yeah.
My little office is like a little battle cave, and we're bombarded with the radiation all day.
So Mark, where can people connect with you?
LinkedIn. LinkedIn's Marc Jorgensen. It's pretty easy. I've had that LinkedIn forever, so I lucked out and got to use my whole name for my LinkedIn profile.
Nice.
Yeah, that, and then D&M website, dmenterprise.net. Go out there, you can connect to us and hook up with us there. But LinkedIn's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me.
Awesome. Marc Jorgensen, thank you. It's been a real pleasure to learn about, from someone that's been in the trenches doing technology, how you have transitioned over to the trusted advisor side, what the, big secret is, which is relationships and how to cultivate those and, your journey. Really appreciate you being on.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. And thanks to anyone that's watching and or listening. If you learned something today or laughed, please tell someone about this podcast. Thanks again, Marc.
Absolutely. Thanks, Lou.
Yep. This has been another exciting episode of Channel Security Secrets. See you next time. That's a wrap for this episode of Channel Security Secrets. Thanks for tuning in. For show notes, guest info, and more episodes, visit us at channelsecuritysecrets.com. Channel Security Secrets is sponsored by Cyber Defense Group. When it comes to protecting your business, don't settle for reactive. Partner with experts who build resilience from the ground up.